The Great Hall of Concordance Prime stretched for nearly a mile in every direction. Thousands of seats rose in curved tiers toward a ceiling made of living crystal that shifted colors with the mood of the assembly. Today, the crystal glowed a soft gold. The elder races were pleased with themselves. Ambassador Yuna Kim sat in the lowest tier, where humanity had been placed 60 years ago when they first joined the Galactic Assembly. The seats were smaller here. The viewing screens were older. The message was clear without anyone having to say it. Humanity was young. Humanity was primitive. Humanity should be grateful to sit anywhere at all. Yuna wore a simple black suit. No medals. No decorations. Just clean lines and quiet dignity. Beside her, Lieutenant Ara Bake reviewed data on a small tablet, her face carefully blank. Around them, delegates from 900 species talked and laughed and made deals that would shape the fates of trillions. None of them looked at the human section. High Arbiter Velun rose to speak. He was tall, even for his kind, with silver scales that caught the light like polished metal. His species had ruled the assembly for 800,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall like waves on a beach. To them, humanity was not even a ripple. We gather today to discuss the human petition for expanded colonization rights, Velun announced. His voice filled the hall without effort. The youngest members of our assembly wish to spread beyond their current borders. Soft laughter rippled through the upper tiers. Yuna did not react. She had learned long ago that reaction was what they wanted. Ambassador Kim, Velun said, looking down at her with eyes that held no warmth. You may present your case. Yuna stood. She was small compared to most species here. A human woman in a hall of giants. But her voice was steady when she spoke. Honored assembly, she began. Humanity comes before you with a simple request. Our population grows. Our colonies thrive. We ask only for the right to settle 3 additional systems in unclaimed space. Systems that no other species has shown interest in for over 10,000 years. She presented data, population projections, economic models, environmental studies. Everything was perfect. Everything was reasonable. She spoke for 20 minutes, and not once did her voice waver. When she finished, Trade Minister Koss leaned forward. He was a creature of many limbs and many eyes, and all those eyes looked at Yuna with something like amusement. These systems you want, Koss said slowly. They are far from your current space. How would you even reach them? Human ships are so very slow. More laughter. Louder this time. We would find a way, Yuna said simply. I'm sure you would try, Koss replied. Your kind does try so hard. It's almost endearing. Yuna said nothing. Beside her, Ara's grip tightened on her tablet. The vote came quickly. 900 species raised their marks in the ancient way. The crystal ceiling flickered as it counted. Red for no, blue for yes. The chamber filled with red light. The motion fails, High Arbiter Velun announced. Humanity's request for expansion is denied due to insufficient civilizational maturity. Perhaps in another century, when you have learned more, you may ask again. The hall erupted in conversation. Delegates turned to their own business, dismissing the humans as easily as one might dismiss a child's drawing. Yuna gathered her materials and prepared to leave, but Ara did not move. Ambassador, she whispered. Something is wrong. Yuna paused. She had worked with Ara for 5 years. The young lieutenant did not speak without reason. What is it? The vote count, Ara said, her voice barely audible. I was tracking the signals. 17 species voted yes. But the count showed only 3. Yuna felt something cold settle in her chest. You're certain? I recorded everything. Ara's face was pale. Someone changed the numbers. They left the hall without another word. The other delegates did not notice. Why would they? Humans were always leaving, always retreating, always accepting their place at the bottom. It was the natural order of things. In her private quarters on the station, Yuna watched as Ara worked through the night. The young lieutenant pulled data from every source she could access. Communication logs, trade records, military movements. What she found was worse than vote manipulation. They've been planning this for decades. Ara said as the sun rose over Concordance Prime. Her voice was hollow. Look at this. Classified directive from 40 years ago. The Assembly designated humanity as a Category 7 threat. What does that mean? It means containment. Ara pulled up more files. Slow suppression. Limit their technology. Restrict their trade. Keep them dependent. And if they ever become too strong. She trailed off. Show me, Yuna said quietly. The files painted a picture of careful, patient destruction. Human research stations that suffered mysterious accidents. Trade deals that fell apart for unexplained reasons. Colonies that faced crop failures and equipment breakdowns. None of it looked connected. All of it was. They were never going to let us grow, Ara said. They see us as a threat. Something to be controlled. Yuna sat in silence for a long time. Outside her window, ships from 100 worlds came and went. The galaxy carried on its business, vast and ancient and utterly indifferent to human suffering. Does Admiral Park know? She finally asked. Not yet. I wanted to confirm everything first. Yuna nodded slowly. She thought of all the years she had spent in this hall. All the insults she had swallowed. All the dignity she had maintained while creatures who had never known struggle laughed at her people. She had believed, truly believed, that patience would win. That if humanity proved themselves worthy, the galaxy would accept them. She understood now. The galaxy would never accept them. The game was rigged from the start. Open a secure channel to Earth Command, Yuna said. Her voice was different now. The warmth was gone. Priority 1. Admiral Park Tay only. Ara made the connection. Static filled the screen, then cleared to show a man with gray hair and steady eyes. Admiral Park Tay had led Earth's fleet for 20 years. He had never lost a battle, and he had never started one. He was a man who believed in peace, but he was also a man who understood war. Ambassador Kim, he said. I was not expecting your call. The vote did not go well, I assume. The vote was manipulated, Yuna replied. But that is not why I am calling. She paused, gathering herself for what came next. Admiral, I need to tell you something. About what they have been doing to us. About what they plan to do. She told him everything. The files, the sabotage, the containment directive. Admiral Park listened without interrupting. His face did not change, but something shifted in his eyes, something old and cold and very, very patient. When Yuna finished, the channel was silent for a long moment. I see, Admiral Park finally said. Thank you, Ambassador. Return home. We have much to discuss. The channel closed. Yuna stared at the blank screen. What happens now? Ara asked. Yuna turned to look at the Great Hall of Concordance Prime one last time. Somewhere in there, the elder races were celebrating another successful day of keeping humanity in its place. Now, Yuna said quietly. They learned that they were never our friends. The war room beneath Earth's surface had not been used in 30 years. Dust covered the old screens. The chairs creaked when people sat in them, but Admiral Park Tay had ordered it opened. And so the leaders of humanity gathered in a place built for darker times. Dr. Jia Song stood before them with files that had taken her team 6 weeks to decode. She was a small woman with tired eyes and steady hands. She had spent her career building things that would help humanity reach the stars. Now she was explaining how the stars had been trying to kill them all along. The pattern is clear, she said, her voice flat. Every major setback humanity has faced in the past 50 years was engineered. The reactor failure on Mars Station, the plague on Colony 7, the mining accident that killed 4,000 workers on New Sol. She paused. All of it was them. The room was silent. Generals and politicians stared at screens filled with evidence. Communications between assembly species. Payment records. Assassination orders written in languages humanity was not supposed to understand. Admiral Park sat at the head of the table. His face showed nothing. How did we miss this? Asked General Bora Lee. She commanded Earth's ground forces, and her voice shook with anger. 50 years of sabotage, and we never knew? We trusted them, Dr. Song replied simply. They counted on that. On the other side of Earth's territory, Captain Han Wu stood in a dying field. The colony of New Busan had been humanity's pride. Rich soil, clean water, families who had worked for generations to build something beautiful. Now the crops were black and rotting, and the colonists were starving. The contamination came from the aid supplies, said the colony's governor, an old man named Duri Choi. His hands trembled as he spoke. The assembly sent them. They said they wanted to help, Han Wu knelt and touched the dead soil. He had been a soldier for 20 years. He had seen battle and death and things that kept him awake at night. But this was different. This was murder, dressed as kindness. How many colonies received these supplies? He asked. 12. Governor Choi replied. All of them are reporting the same problems. Han Wu stood and looked at the sky. Somewhere up there, assembly ships were probably watching, waiting to see if their plan was working, waiting for humanity to beg for more help. He activated his communicator. Admiral Park. This is Captain Han. I have confirmation. The colony failures are deliberate. Recommend immediate quarantine of all assembly aid shipments. The Admiral's response was immediate. Understood, Captain. Return to Earth. We are making decisions. Back in the Galactic Assembly, the elder races were celebrating. Trade Minister Koss had proposed the Human Protection Act, and everyone agreed it was a wonderful idea. Humanity would become a ward of the Assembly. Their military would be reduced. Their technology would be monitored. Their colonies would be supervised by wiser, older species who knew what was best. It is for their own good, High Arbiter Velen told the Assembly. They are simply not ready for the responsibilities of full membership. Perhaps they never will be. Some species are meant to be led. The hall filled with applause. Delegates congratulated each other on their wisdom and kindness. Ambassador Yuna Kim watched from her seat in the lowest tier. She had been ordered to attend, to witness the vote that would strip her people of everything they had built. The message was clear. Sit. Watch. Accept. But Yuna was not watching the vote. She was watching the delegates. The way they smiled. The way they looked at her section with pity and contempt. The way they spoke of humanity like farmers spoke of animals. Her tablet buzzed. A message from Admiral Park. 2 words. Come home. She stood and walked out. No one tried to stop her. No one even noticed. The flight back to Earth took 3 days. Yuna spent them reading reports, watching videos, understanding the full depth of what had been done to her people. By the time she landed, the cold feeling in her chest had become something else. Something harder. The council was waiting. Admiral Park stood at the center of the war room, surrounded by screens showing everything humanity had learned. The faces around him were tired and angry and afraid. We have confirmed 147 acts of sabotage, the Admiral said. Direct attacks on human infrastructure, disguised as accidents. 32,000 of our people are dead because of them. More will die if we do nothing. What are our options? Asked Director Mina Yoon, head of Earth's intelligence service. 3, Admiral Park replied. First, we accept the Protection Act. We become what they want us to be, a pet species, controlled and contained. No one spoke. The idea was unthinkable. Second, we fight. We reveal what they have done and demand justice from the Assembly. General Lee shook her head. They control the Assembly. Any evidence we present will be dismissed. They will call us liars and use it as excuse for harsher measures. Yes, Admiral Park agreed. Which leaves the third option. He pressed a button. The screens changed. Maps appeared showing human space, assembly space, and the vast darkness beyond. Trade routes, military positions, economic networks. We leave. The Admiral said simply. We withdraw from every treaty, every agreement, every relationship we have with them. We cut all ties, and we prepare for what comes next. The room was silent. They will not let us go easily, Yuna said. They will see it as rebellion. Let them. Admiral Park replied. His voice was quiet, but it filled the room. For 60 years, we have tried to be good members of their assembly. We followed their rules. We accepted their insults. We believed that if we were patient enough, kind enough, humble enough, they would finally accept us. He paused. We were wrong. He looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders, soldiers and scientists, politicians and engineers. People who had spent their lives building a future for their species. They do not see us as equals, he continued. They never did. To them, we are a threat to be contained. A mistake to be corrected. They fear what we might become, so they have decided we will become nothing. His eyes hardened. I say we prove them right to be afraid. Dr. Song stepped forward. Admiral, there is something else. Something I have not yet shared. She hesitated. Project Prometheus. The name meant nothing to most of the room. But Admiral Park nodded slowly. "How far along are we?" "Ready," Song replied. "It has been ready for years. We just never had reason to use it." "What is Project Prometheus?" Yuna asked. Song smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Everything they think we cannot do. Everything they believe is beyond us. We have been developing it in secret since the day we joined the assembly." She paused. "We always knew this day might come. We prepared." Admiral Park stood straighter. For a moment, he looked like a man carrying the weight of billions of lives. Then he made his decision. "Ambassador Kim, return to the Assembly for the Protection Act vote. But do not vote. Do not argue. Just deliver a message." Yuna met his eyes. "What message?" "That humanity is done asking for permission, that we are done accepting our place at the bottom of their table." He paused. "And that they should have been more careful about making us their enemy." Yuna nodded slowly. For the first time in weeks, she felt something other than anger. She felt ready. "When?" she asked. 3 days. Admiral Park replied. "In 3 days, the galaxy will learn that humanity is no longer playing their game. And they will learn what fear really means." The crystal ceiling of Concordance Prime glowed bright gold. The assembly was in a festive mood. Today was the day they would finally solve the human problem, once and for all. Delegates filled every seat in the Great Hall. Species that had not attended a session in centuries made the journey just to witness this moment. The air buzzed with conversation and laughter. Trade Minister Koss moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations for his brilliant Protection Act. High Arbiter Velen sat in his ancient chair, looking down at the chaos with satisfied eyes. In the lowest tier, the human delegation sat in silence. Ambassador Yuna Kim wore the same simple black suit she always wore. Beside her sat Lieutenant Ara Bake and 12 other human diplomats. Their faces showed nothing. War Chief Thrawn, the massive military leader of the Dominion, leaned over to speak with Velun. "They look so small today," he said, his deep voice rumbling with amusement. "I almost feel sorry for them." "Do not waste your pity," Velun replied. "They are exactly where they belong. After today, they will never be a concern again." The session began with ceremony. Ancient words were spoken in ancient languages. The crystal ceiling shifted through patterns that had been used for 1,000,000 years. Then, High Arbiter Velen rose to speak. "We gather today to ensure the safety and stability of the galactic community," he announced. "The Human Protection Act will provide guidance and oversight for our youngest members. It is an act of kindness, an act of wisdom, an act of fear." The voice was quiet, but it cut through the hall like a blade. Every eye turned to the lowest tier. Ambassador Yuna Kim had risen from her seat. Velun's silver scales tightened with irritation. "Ambassador Kim, you are out of order. The floor has not been given to you." "I am not asking for the floor," Yuna replied. "I am taking it." Shocked murmurs rippled through the assembly. This was not how things were done. Humans did not interrupt. Humans did not speak without permission. Humans sat quietly and accepted their place. "You forget yourself," Trade Minister Koss hissed. "Sit down before you embarrass your species further." Yuna smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "I have spent 60 years in this hall," she said, her voice carrying to every corner. 60 years of sitting in the worst seats. 60 years of being laughed at and dismissed and treated like a child begging for scraps. She paused. 60 years of watching you smile to our faces while you destroyed us from behind. The murmurs grew louder. Velun raised a hand for silence. "These are serious accusations," he said carefully. "Perhaps the stress of your position has affected your judgment." "Has it?" Yuna pulled out a small device. "Then perhaps the assembly would like to see this." She pressed a button. The great screens of Concordance Prime, which had displayed the will of the assembly for eons, flickered and changed. Suddenly they showed something else. Communication logs, payment records, assassination orders, evidence of 50 years of sabotage against humanity. The hall fell silent. "The reactor failure on Mars Station," Yuna said as images scrolled past. "Your agents. The plague on Colony 7. Your bioweapon. The mining accident on New Sol. Your explosives." Her voice grew colder with each word. 4,000 workers dead. Families destroyed. Children who will never see their parents again. All because you were afraid of what we might become. This is fabricated, Koss stammered. Human lies designed to. The files are authentic. Yuna cut him off. Every species here can verify them. Some of your own people helped us, you know. Not everyone in the galaxy agrees with what you have done. High Arbiter Velun stared at the screens. His ancient eyes showed something new, something he had not felt in thousands of years. Uncertainty. Even if some of this is true, he said slowly, it changes nothing. The Protection Act is for the good of all. Humanity is simply too dangerous to be allowed free development. Surely you must see that. Oh, we see it, Yuna replied. We finally see everything. She straightened her shoulders and looked around the hall. At the thousands of delegates who had spent decades treating her people like insects, at the elder races who believed they had the right to decide who lived and who died, at the vast, ancient, arrogant civilization that had never once considered that humanity might have a choice. The Terran Unity hereby withdraws from the Galactic Assembly, Yuna announced. Her voice rang like a bell. We withdraw from all treaties, all trade agreements, all mutual defense pacts, all obligations, and all relationships. The hall erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted. Some laughed in disbelief. Others stared in shock. You cannot do this, Velun said. Without assembly support, your species will collapse. You depend on us for technology, for trade, for protection from the dangers of the galaxy. You will be alone. We have always been alone. Yuna replied. You just helped us realize it. She gathered her materials and looked up at Velun one last time. You wanted us contained, she said softly. You should have wanted us as friends. You had 60 years to treat us as equals. 60 years to choose kindness instead of cruelty. You failed. She paused. Now you will learn the difference. Ambassador Yuna Kim turned and walked toward the exit. Behind her, the other human delegates rose and followed. 12 people walking through a hall of thousands, small and alone and utterly unafraid. The great doors of the assembly opened before them. For a moment, Yuna paused on the threshold. She did not look back. One last thing, she said. You were right to fear us. The doors closed behind her. For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Assembly sat in complete silence. No one knew what to say. No one knew what to do. The crystal ceiling flickered through colors that had no name, reflecting the confusion below. Then Trade Minister Koss spoke. His many eyes were wide with something that might have been fear. What do humans have? He asked quietly. What could they possibly have that we should be afraid of? No one answered. War Chief Thrawn sat very still. He was old, even for his species. He had seen wars and empires and species that rose and fell like flames. He knew what strength looked like, and for the first time, he understood what he had seen in the human delegation. Not weakness, not submission, patience. They were waiting, he said slowly. This whole time, they were waiting for us to give them a reason. Velun looked at him sharply. A reason for what? Thrawn did not answer immediately. He was watching the great doors where the humans had vanished. Such a small species. Such a young species. And yet they had walked out of this hall like they owned the stars. We should find out, Thrawn said finally. What they have been building all these years. Before it is too late. But deep in his ancient heart, War Chief Thrawn suspected it was already too late. Humanity had been sitting at the lowest tier for 60 years. Not because they belonged there. Not because they were weak. But because they had been preparing for this exact moment. And now the preparation was complete. 6 months after humanity walked out of the Galactic Assembly, the markets began to collapse. Trade Minister Koss stared at the reports on his desk and tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong. Human goods had seemed so unimportant. Small luxuries, minor technologies, things the galaxy could easily live without. But now those things were gone. And the galaxy was learning that it could not live without them after all. The textile shortage has spread to 40 systems, his aide reported. Prices have increased by 300%. Riots are beginning on several worlds. How? Koss demanded. Humans are primitives. They could not possibly have been producing so much. They were, Minister. They simply never told us. The aide pulled up more data. Human entertainment programs were being watched by billions. Human medical devices were being used in thousands of hospitals. Human food processing technology was feeding entire species. He paused. We never noticed because we never thought to look. Across the galaxy, the effects rippled outward. Factories closed. Supply chains shattered. Species that had mocked humanity for decades now found themselves desperately searching for alternatives that did not exist. And humanity? Humanity was thriving. In a secret facility deep beneath Luna's surface, Dr. Jia Song watched as the last components of Project Prometheus came online. She had spent 20 years building this, 20 years of hidden research, secret factories, and technology that humanity had kept locked away from assembly eyes. "Status report," she said. "All systems active," replied her assistant, a young engineer named Hyun Kang. "The fleet is ready," Song nodded slowly. The fleet. 200 ships that officially did not exist. Each one faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything the assembly had ever seen, while humanity had been sitting quietly at the lowest tier, accepting their role as the galaxy's weakest member. They had been building in secret, preparing. "Send word to Admiral Park," Song said. "Tell him we are ready for demonstration." The demonstration came 3 weeks later. An assembly patrol fleet crossed into human space without permission. 12 ships, commanded by a Dominion captain named Varrock, who had been told that humans were too weak to resist. His orders were simple: enter human territory, make observations, remind the primitives that the assembly was watching. Captain Han Wu intercepted them at the border. The HFY Silent Judgment was not an impressive ship by assembly standards. It was small. Its weapons seemed outdated. When Varrock saw it on his sensors, he laughed. "One ship," he told his crew. "They send one ship against 12. Open a channel. I want to hear them beg." The channel opened. Captain Han Wu's face appeared on the screen. He was a calm man with gray hair and steady eyes. He did not look afraid. "Dominion fleet," he said. "You have entered Terran space without authorization. You have 10 seconds to reverse course." Varrock laughed again. "Or what? Human? Your little ship will stop us? You do not have the power to." Han Wu ended the transmission. 11 seconds later, the battle was over. The Silent Judgment moved like nothing Varrock had ever seen. One moment it was there. The next it was somewhere else. Weapons that should not exist tore through shields that should have been unbreakable. In the time it took Varrock to shout a single order, 3 of his ships were disabled, then 5, then 9. The final 3 surrendered before Han Wu could fire again. "Disable their communications," Han Wu ordered. "But do not destroy them. We want them to be found." His weapons officer nodded. "Yes, Captain. And what message should we send?" Han Wu thought for a moment. Then he smiled. "Just slightly. Tell them this was a warning." The message reached the assembly 3 days later, along with footage from the battle that showed exactly what human ships could do. High Arbiter Velen watched it 17 times. Each time, his scales grew paler. "Impossible," he whispered. "They should not have this technology. They should not be able to, and yet they do." War Chief Thrawn interrupted. He had been summoned to watch the footage, and his ancient face was grim. "Those weapons, that speed, that shielding, we have never seen anything like it. How long have they had this? Years, probably. Perhaps decades." Thrawn turned away from the screen. They were hiding it. All this time, they were hiding their true strength. Velun felt something cold crawling up his spine. Why? Why would they hide? If they were this powerful, why did they let us treat them like inferiors? Thrawn was quiet for a long moment. He thought of Ambassador Yuna Kim and her quiet dignity. He thought of 60 years of insults that humans had swallowed without complaint. He thought of a species that had sat in the lowest tier without protest, year after year, watching and waiting. "Because we were teaching them," he finally said. "Every time we laughed at them, we showed them who we really were. Every time we sabotaged them, we proved they could not trust us. Every time we treated them like animals, we gave them a reason." His voice dropped. They were not weak. They were patient, and they were learning. Velun's hands trembled. What were they learning? That the galaxy respects only power. Thrawn met the High Arbiter's eyes. And now they have it. The next months brought more revelations. Human colonies that had seemed to be struggling were suddenly prosperous. Human ships that had seemed slow and outdated were replaced by vessels that crossed the galaxy in days. Human technology that had seemed primitive was revealed to be generations ahead of assembly standards. Ambassador Yuna Kim released a statement to the galactic press. Her voice was calm and cold. For 60 years, we tried to be your friends. We offered cooperation. We offered trade. We offered peace. You gave us sabotage, assassination, and contempt. She paused. We will not make the same mistake again. Humanity no longer needs the assembly. But the assembly, it seems, needed humanity more than it ever realized. On worlds across the galaxy, species began to whisper. Not about how foolish humans were. Not about how primitive they were. About how they had been wrong. Trade Minister Koss received reports of assembly species reaching out to humanity secretly, asking about trade agreements, asking about alliances, asking if maybe, just maybe, humans would be willing to forgive. They are stealing our members, Koss said at an emergency assembly session. Species are defecting. They see human power, and they want to join it. Then we must show greater power, Velen replied desperately. We must remind the galaxy who truly rules. But even as he spoke, his voice shook, because he knew the truth now. The assembly had spent 1,000,000 years believing they were the greatest civilization in existence. They had looked down on younger species, they had crushed any threat before it could grow, and they had failed to see the greatest threat of all, a species that learned from every insult, a species that grew stronger from every attack, a species that had been preparing, quietly and patiently, for the day when the galaxy would finally push them too far. That day had come, and now humanity was no longer sitting at the lowest tier. They were building their own table, and the galaxy was beginning to understand that the seats would be very limited. War Chief Thrawn stood alone in his chambers that night, looking out at the stars. Somewhere in that darkness, human ships were moving, human colonies were growing, human power was spreading. He thought of all the species that had risen and fallen over the centuries. He thought of empires that had seemed eternal and were now forgotten dust. He thought of the great cycle of power that turned endlessly through the cosmos. We made them, he said quietly to the empty room. We created this. And now we will have to live with what we created. The stars did not answer. But somewhere in the distance, Thrawn imagined he could hear humanity laughing. 1 year after humanity left the assembly, the galaxy had a new center. The Terran diplomatic station hung in the void between stars, larger than anything the assembly had ever built. Its halls were filled with light and color, designed to welcome species of every shape and size. Delegates from 30 worlds walked its corridors, speaking in dozens of languages, united by something the assembly had never understood: respect. Ambassador Yuna Kim stood at a great window, watching a fleet of ships arrive. More delegates, more species joining the Terran Compact. Every week brought new members. Species that had been oppressed by the assembly for centuries and now saw a different path. 42 species have joined, Lieutenant Arabek reported. She was no longer a lieutenant. She was an ambassador herself now, representing humanity to worlds that had once looked down on her kind. 18 more have requested membership, and the assembly? Shrinking. Ara smiled slightly. High Arbiter Valoon has called 7 emergency sessions in the past month. Each one ends with more defections. Yuna nodded slowly. She felt no satisfaction, no joy. Just a quiet understanding that the galaxy was changing, and humanity was the reason why. The Terran Compact was everything the assembly was not. There were no lowest tiers. No special privileges for elder races. Every member had an equal voice and equal rights. Trade was fair. Technology was shared. And no species was ever called primitive. The Velen delegation has arrived, Ara said quietly. They are asking for an audience. Yuna turned from the window. Show them in. High Arbiter Velen entered the room slowly. He looked different than he had a year ago. Smaller, somehow. His silver scales had lost their shine. His proud posture had bent under the weight of failure. Behind him came Trade Minister Koss, his many eyes darting nervously around the human station. And War Chief Thrawn, old and tired, but still carrying himself with dignity. Ambassador Kim, Velen said. His voice was hoarse. Thank you for seeing us, High Arbiter. Yuna gestured to seats. Please, they sat. The silence stretched. We have come to offer terms, Velen finally said. The Assembly is prepared to restore humanity's full rights. Immediate seat on the High Council. Expanded territory. Complete trade access. We will even acknowledge He hesitated. The mistakes of the past. Yuna listened without expression. In return, Velun continued. We ask only that humanity rejoin the Assembly. Help us rebuild. Share your technology. Become partners in the great work of galactic civilization. The room was quiet. Ara looked at Yuna. Thrawn watched with ancient eyes. Yuna leaned forward slightly. You had 60 years to make us partners, she said softly. 60 years to treat us as equals. Instead, you laughed at us. You sabotaged us. You murdered our people and called it policy. She paused. Now you come here, to our station, and ask us to save you. Velun's scales rippled with distress. We were wrong. I admit it freely. We underestimated you. We feared you. We made terrible choices. Yes, you did. But surely, Koss interrupted, his voice desperate. Surely humanity is not so cruel as to refuse reconciliation. You speak of respect and equality. Would you deny us the chance to change? Yuna was quiet for a long moment. She thought of Mars Station and the 4,000 dead. She thought of New Busan and the starving colonists. She thought of every insult, every manipulation, every act of casual cruelty that the Assembly had committed, and then she thought of the future. Humanity does not want revenge, she said finally. We are not building the compact to punish you. We are building it because the galaxy deserves something better than what you created. She stood. The Assembly is welcome to apply for membership in the Terran Compact. Your application will be reviewed like any other. If you meet our standards for mutual respect and fair treatment, you may be accepted. She paused. Eventually, Balloon stared at her. You want us to apply? To become members of a human alliance? To sit at your table as equals? When you once made us sit at yours, Yuna finished. Yes, exactly. Her eyes hardened. You taught us that position matters. That power matters. We learned your lesson well. Now you will learn ours. The meeting ended shortly after. Velun and his delegation returned to their ship, defeated and confused. As they left, War Chief Thrawn paused at the door. Ambassador Kim, he said quietly. I must know. All those years, when we dismissed you and mocked you and tried to destroy you, were you always planning for this? Yuna considered the question. We were hoping it would not be necessary, she replied. We genuinely wanted peace. But we are humans, War Chief. We prepare for the worst. She smiled slightly. We have been doing that for a very long time. Thrawn nodded slowly. There was something in his eyes that might have been respect. Then we were right to fear you, he said. We were just wrong about what to do with that fear. He left without another word. That evening, Admiral Park Tae broadcast a message to the galaxy. His face appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds, and billions of beings stopped to listen. 1 year ago, humanity left the Galactic Assembly, he said. We left because we had no choice. Because we had been betrayed by those who should have been our allies. Because we finally understood that the galaxy we believed in did not exist. He paused, but we did not leave to hide. We did not leave to take revenge. We left to build something better. Images appeared behind him. The Terran diplomatic station. Human ships helping rebuild alien colonies. Scientists from different species working together in human laboratories. The Terran Compact is open to any species that believes in equality, Park continued. In respect. In cooperation instead of domination. We do not care if you are old or young, powerful or weak. We care only that you treat others as you wish to be treated. His eyes hardened. But let me be clear. We will not be taken advantage of again. We will not be manipulated or betrayed. Any species that threatens our people, our allies, or the peace we are building will face consequences. He paused. We were once the quiet guests at someone else's table. Now we have our own table. And we decide who sits at it. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, species looked at each other and began to understand. Humanity was not just another power. They were not building another empire. They were creating something new, something that had never existed before, a galaxy based on respect instead of fear. But underneath that message was another truth, one that the elder races understood all too well. Humanity had been patient. Humanity had been underestimated. And when the time came, humanity had shown exactly what they were capable of. The Assembly had spent 1,000,000 years teaching the galaxy to fear the wrong things. Now they understood what fear really meant. On the observation deck of the Terran diplomatic station, Ambassador Ara Bake walked among alien delegates who bowed as she passed. She still remembered being a young lieutenant, sitting in the lowest tier of Concordance Prime, watching her people be mocked and dismissed. That felt like another lifetime. A small alien child tugged at their parent's arm and pointed at Ara. "Who is she?" the child asked in their clicking language. The parent looked at Ara with something like awe. "That is a human," they whispered. "They are the ones who taught the galaxy that fear has a new name." Ara smiled and walked on. Behind her, through the great windows of the station, Earth hung blue and beautiful against the stars. Once, it had seemed so small, so isolated, so alone. Now it was the center of a growing constellation of allied worlds, the heart of something that would change the galaxy forever. The stars had once seemed so far away. Now they belonged to humanity, and the galaxy was only beginning to understand what that meant.